Hey folks, Captain Mike here from Salty Cape, and today I'm in Buzzards Bay kicking off my striper season. This time of year it's likely a schoolie trip, but the name of the game today is cruising Buzzards Bay looking for birds, and as you can see behind me, mission accomplished, step one. And sometimes the birds will be working with no fish under it, other times they will be. So we're going to stop and check out the various little pods of birds, but something tells me this one is going to do just fine for us. So we're striper fishing here in early May in Buzzards Bay. So the name of the game today, well really the playbook, is going to be covering ground with keeping our eyes peeled, looking for life. In Buzzards Bay this time of year, you want to see terns, lots of them, ideally stacked up, in a vertical sort of cyclonic fashion, aggressively feeding. And that's obviously a tell that, well, certainly there's bait in the area, but ideally stripers pushing up the bait. Now, this time of year, early May, there's pushes of fish that come almost daily through the area. But just because they were in one spot yesterday doesn't mean they're going to be in the same spot today. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled as we cruise Buzzards Bay. We just pushed through Woods Hole. We're heading towards the west end of the canal, or upper Buzzards Bay. There's likely to be fish anywhere in this area, but we're going to keep our eyes peeled and we break for fish. So we found our first grouping of birds that are more than just a cluster of cormorants. And so I just want to talk about how you approach a school. You don't want to go blasting in. We're here, we're going, 1400 RPM, a distance a ways out. But as I get even closer, maybe 5 or 6 cast lengths out, I'm even going to slow it down even more. I don't want to go plowing right up to the school. If anything, I want to go just a little too far, just because sometimes a school can turn and go towards you. You want to study it, you want to lead it. If the school's going one way, you want to get just ahead of where, you want to sort of lead the school cast sort of ahead of where they are. Or whatever you do, you don't want to go plowing right up to the school and stop. There's a number of things that can spook fish, especially in calm conditions like today. And RPM changes, the engines, like lots of movement with the engines, just the boat wake, the sound of the boat, and also just approaching slow. It's easier to read what's going on, so you can make a last minute alteration without a whole lot of commotion. So I'm just going to approach this school very slowly. We don't want to spook anything. There's plenty of fish. We're the only boat here, but if we weren't the only boat here, lots of slow movements is the way to go so you don't spook the fish. Just going to get just close enough to get my lure into the melee. I'm just going to idle up and take it out of gear. Just going to coast in. I'm going to slide up to the bow and hopefully get a fish. So I just saw my first fish roll. Oh, just had a follow behind my lure, a bump. Oh, they're sipping on real small stuff. These fish are swimming almost in slow-mo. I can see them just swimming around. I don't know what they're feeding on. I have a very smallest slow tail we make, and it's just going to crank it very slow. There we go. That's a good fish. There we go. On the board for 2022. Just beginning to get a little offended there. But the slower I retrieve that lure, the more they're interested in it. And take them to the back here. Nice healthy springtime striper. Now what I'm going to do, it's just me in the boat, give myself a rod's length of line. And grab this fish. Nice springtime, chunky fish. Look at the girth on this one. And I'll let this fish go. Now one thing, if I don't have to take the fish out of the water, I don't want to. That minimizes any stress or damage on the fish. I'm just gonna let this guy go. Get right back at it. They're right here, I don't even need to move. Got my slow tail on, lefty cast. Now you can see with a faster retrieve, they're not interested in it. But I guarantee, oh, there we go. Right as I stopped it, that fish picked it right up. Now that's what's nice about this slow tail design, the twin tail design of these lures, is the lure actually has a fair amount of action in the slowest of retrieve speeds. So on a greasy calm day today, when the fish are keyed in on real little baits, you know, it can give you just a little bit of an edge. You can fish it slow and let it fall and have some action. But, you know, I think these fish, the tide's just gonna get going. My instinct is it's gonna get hot and heavy really quickly, but here we go. I'm gonna leave rod in the holder. So, 2 for 3 casts today. Off to a great start. Not the biggest fish of the year, but still awesome. So when you're fishing the slow tail, nice and slow like we've been doing, now one good tip is to slow it down, pause it, reel, pause, reel. Oop, just had a bump. And just, sometimes the stall and the start can trigger a response. So especially if they're following it, you don't know if they're following it, but just a little pickup. But just for the most part, nice, slow and steady is all you need with these. But just throw in a little pause and a start and a stop. And sometimes that can trigger that reaction strike. So I find that in this situation, the calmer and greasier the water, the more finicky they can be. As the wind picks up sometimes, I can fire everything up. So in a situation like this, in super calm water, stripers feeding on small bait, you know, in my opinion, it's really hard to beat a little small soft bait like this. And what I like about the slow tail is it has plenty of action even on a very slow retrieve. And even on the drop, those twin tails are gonna, you know, really have a lot of action as this bait slowly sinks. There we go, right on the drop, just like that. It's funny, when they hit on the drop, it almost feels like a scup hit, like a tap, tap, tap. Very similar to, I don't know if you've ever fished a jig in fresh water for largemouth bass. Very similar kind of tap, tap hit. And you don't know what you're gonna get when you set the hook because they all feel the same, whether it's a little micro bass like this one or a 20-pound fish. Pop the hook out. It's a little less chunky than some of the others, but I'll take them. So you would think with all this action, the fishing would be automatic, but these schoolies are being a little finicky today. Now, to say you want to fish these baits slow is an understatement. I am just casting this slow tail and letting it drop, letting those tails do a little action and sinking it. If I don't have any hits, I'm going to reel it to the surface, then let it fall. And I'm watching the line. When I get a hit, it's a tap, tap, tap in the line in a very quick hook set. Just reel it slow, let it drop. I mean, it's crazy how finicky these fish have gotten. There's a little bit of a wind change. Maybe that caused it. Who knows? Maybe it's me. But all I know is to get these fish to eat my lure today is I'm having to fish it super slow. And I didn't get one on that cast, but I bet I'll get one on this next one. And cast out, get control of my line, and the wind's picked up, so I'm watching my line more than I'm feeling, because that line gets tight. I'm gonna reel it slow, just let it drop. Now the beauty of the slow tail is as that bait is sinking, there's all kinds of action going on as it drops. So even if you're just letting it sink slowly, it's doing its job. Just like that, there we go. Wow, it's crazy. You've been doing this a long time, long enough to know that there's times like this where there's a lot of fish and they're eating aggressively, but they're hard to catch. But it's still crazy to me how many birds, how many fish, how much bait that they can be this finicky. I'm going to take this fish aft so I can release it while it's in the water. Now I like to leave a rod's length of line so I have plenty of room to work. I grab the fish, maybe take a little more line here. And so the ideal way to release a striper, if possible, or whenever possible, is to leave as much of the fish in the water as you can. So again, having that rod's length of line, maybe a little more, is handy. So I've got the rod out of the equation, it's here in the rod holder. This little paddle tail, dehook the fish, and there he goes. So the action's died down a little bit, and it seems like the fish have scattered, certainly the birds have scattered too. Also noticed that the wind has picked up a little bit, and I also think the tide is picking up a little bit. And so when this happens, when you come up on a school of breaking fish in open water, like we did today here in Buzzards Bay, the downside to open water fish is they can just pick up and move. There's no real structure to anchor, sort of what's going on. And so, the name of the game now, the approach is to, go find another school of fish, or maybe the same school of fish that has moved. And so I've noticed that the wind's picked up a little bit. I'm going to follow the wind. There's not a ton of tide here, but the tide, I think, is either close to slack or start moving. You have two real options in terms of finding fish that have moved. You either follow the wind or follow the tide. In this case, I feel like the wind is the better option because it is sort of a slackish low tide here. But it should start moving again soon. So we're just going to pick up and run, follow the wind, and keep our eyes peeled for more birds. Again, we're looking for birds that are very vertical in orientation. That means they're hot and heavy and they're keyed in on something exciting going on. Scattered birds, better than no birds, but less exciting than that cyclonic vortex of birds just stacked real high up in the column there. So this guy is definitely the biggest fish of the day. I'm not going to measure him because we're going to leave him in the water, or her I should say too. But this is pushing close to keeper size. Nice slot fish. And I was perfectly happy catching those little micro schoolies till this big boy or girl. It's hard to say at this size. Most very large striped bass are females, but this is a nice chunky fish. I'm not going to take it out of the water to measure it, but if it's not 28 inches or not a slot fish, it's very close to it. But in this case, we just want a nice healthy release and then off it goes. Now this guy just coughed up some little silver sides, which explains a lot about today. They're keyed in on very small bait and lots of it, and that's why these fish are, sort of tricky to get to commit, because we have a lot of competition. Big plumes of juveniles, what I think are silver sides. It's hard to tell. He spit it out before I could grab it. So I'm gonna let this fish go. So believe it or not, despite all these birds, these guys are proving to be a little on the finicky end of the spectrum. And sometimes I get a little lazy and I get a little stingy with my leader. I don't really feel like retying a uni to uni knot. So I was getting a few fish, but I lengthened my leader. I got back to a more traditional 36-inch, 15-pound test floral leader. And in these greasy, calm conditions, that longer leader, if they can see the knot, can really make a huge difference. Oh, there we go. Slow and steady. Oh, there we went, I should say. There we go again. Boy, do they want that bait slow motion today. The longer leader definitely made a big difference. And so that's one little tip I have. If you're in a situation like that, when you feel like it doesn't matter, and you stop, the action's dying down, don't do what I was doing there and get stingy with the leader. Lengthen your leader, and often that's the only change you need to make to get back in the game. The little guy, keep it in the water. The advantage of a little rubber jig like this. Smallest fish of the day, but we'll take them. So the lure we're using today, this is literally the same lure we've been using all trip long. It's the 3.5-inch Hogy Slow Tail. It's very lightweight, and you can see that it's very simple. It has an unusual tail configuration. You'll see that it's what's called a twin tail. You have the tail sort of going outboard from the center line of the slow tail, the pre-molded stop bait. And what that's going to do is give a tremendous amount of action at very, very, very slow retrieve speeds. As you saw earlier, we're fishing these baits on the drop. So picture that bait while it's sinking down in the water column. It's going to have very natural action as it sort of descends down to the bottom. And that's what the name of the game is today, is fishing these slow, fishing them on a dead drop, reeling them up, letting them fall. So we're really utilizing these twin tails for the action they provide while these baits sort of drop in slow motion. So the outfit I'm using today is a workhorse that I've been using for years and years. You can see this rod and reel combo has some serious miles on it. It's my light tackle, 7 foot, and this is the St. Croix Legend Extreme Inshore series. It's a fairly fast action rod, which is good for snap casting these little baits in the wind. You can really punch these baits sometimes. It's just Murphy's Law. You're always having to cast into the wind when the shot comes. And so this is just a nice little outfit. It's the same outfit I use for albies. Here today, schoolie fishing, any light tackle, inshore striper fishing where my lure weights are under, I'll say 1.5 ounces. This rod will, it says good to 1.25 ounces, but I've thrown 1.5 ounce popper with this rod, okay. But this is just a nice, it's a very high end, but very nice light tackle outfit, very versatile. It's fine on these little schoolies, fine on albies, and over the years I've caught some very sizable stripers on this outfit with smaller plugs. But just a nice, simple, light, high-end inshore outfit like this will pretty much handle 80% of your inshore striper fishing on a center console like this. Now I have a few-year-old Shimano Saragossa 5,000 class reel. I have 30-pound test braid on all my 5,000 class reels, and I have a very long leader today, maybe a 4.5 foot 12-pound test fluorocarbon leader. These fish were a little finicky, so I downsized my leader pound test and lengthened the length of the leader and just tied direct to this little Hogy Slow Tail in the 3.5 inch size. And today we just were fishing it super slow, fishing it on the drop. Fish were a little finicky today, but this light tackle outfit, as always in a lot of our other videos, has just been a perfect setup for nice, easy, fun inshore fishing. So wrapping up here, I guess I would say the takeaway for today is, early spring light tackle striper fishing, it's all about small light tackle, light leaders. Today we had to really fish our bait slow. I think there was a lot of bait to compete with, and the schoolies just wanted a very slow presentation. So to me that means soft plastics, light leaders, and a little bit of patience.